Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and take it off your mobile.
Yeah, I like to be a little mobile. Okay. Well, let me start with a little bit of personal information, but thank you all for coming out. It's a nice crowd and looks like a good mix. And I look forward to having a kind of a discussion afterwards, after the presentation. But my connection with this parsonage for East and West St. Olaf churches is, well, first of all, I was baptized at East St. Olaf and confirmed in West. And my grandfather, the Reverend Borgie, lived in this house for 31 years, from 1926 until 1957. Does that add up? Yeah, 31 years. And and I'm currently with it's called the St. Olaf Heritage Association. It's a little group, some members are here. And we exist, we were formed about 50 years ago when a group of members of the church rescued a little log cabin that they knew, these were kind of old timers in the community, and they knew that that was where the church services were held before there were churches, and there was a log cabin, and it's been restored and maintained for 50 years. And now, now this is coming up, and the situation, just so you have a context before we start, is this is where the pastors from 1877 until 2004 would live with their families. It was the parsonage. So they lived in the middle of the parish, in the community of the church. And along with it goes 60 acres. So it served as a farm as well, so they could support themselves partially. And but around 2004, practices in the Lutheran Church and probably some other churches started to change. The pastors no longer seemed to want to live in a parsonage. They wanted a home of their own. And so that resulted in this building being vacant since 2004, but it's now been used for some time as a church office. So there is some use of it, but it's hasn't been maintained as well as when it was actually a family dwelling. So it's started to deteriorate. And also the churches, as all the mainstream denominations experience, they're getting less members, lower membership, less giving, and so financial strain. And the cost of maintaining a building like this is starting to be something that members are questioning. And so there are even some who are proposing demolishing the building as a cost-saving measure. So with that, I kind of, as you tell from my introduction, I have some kind of attachments to the place. And I think it has historic significance. And for this, I call it our historic landmark. I think it deserves that name. And so as we go along here, you can keep that introduction in mind. Trying to figure out how this works. Okay, so here's an historic timeline. This will be the busiest slide that I have, but I wanted to put it all on one sheet. First of all, 1856 is when St. Olaf's congregation was established by Norwegian pioneers. Came up from Iowa, Wisconsin, some directly from Norway. But they were all Norwegians, all speaking Norwegians, and all Lutherans. In 1857, the very next year, a group of them purchased 60 acres of land in Rockdale Township. So this is within Olmsted County. And during the first years until 1870, the church services were held in private homes. And I'll show you one of those in a minute. The churches were built, constructed in 1870, and initially the St. Olaf congregation was a single entity. And only later, the inflow of immigrants from Norway was so great, the east to west, that pretty soon they needed a second church because traveling was rather cumbersome by horse and foot and oxen. Anyway, 1877 is when a brick parsonage was built for Reverend Thorson, his family. He served there for, I think, 47 years. That's a long time to serve in a place. And he came directly from Norway as a teacher and was studied theology in St. Louis. And this was his church for his whole career. And then 1877, permission was granted for Sargent, Hayfield, Casson, and Rochester members to form their own congregations. The next 1888 to 1917, the predestination controversy split East St. Olaf. I think we've run out of screen here. I'll have to figure out how to show more. How do you do that? Well, I'll just go from memory.
The last one is the 2004 parsonage was used as a church office, not.
Okay, that's the last one. You can see it there, huh? And in 1917 is when the parsonage was clad with wood and expanded somewhat when Reverend Price came. He stayed for 10 years. And so, yeah, I think that completes that slide. So that's kind of the historical sequence. And the first, use the term landmark in the introduction, a structure that marks a stage in history. And this is the Twerberg log house. Actually, it came from Dodge County and was moved to where St. Olaf Parish originated. And this represents the pioneer era, 1856 to 1870, roughly. And it was used for worship before we had churches and as a school before schoolhouses were available. And so this is roughly how it looks today, 50 years after it was part of a residence. And I grew up about a quarter mile away from there. And you couldn't tell that there was a log house in there, but people who knew the history knew that. Going the wrong way. No, okay. So the parsonage is a landmark. It marks a time when, and this is, in my mind, why we may consider this having historical significance. It's a time when rural pastors lived next to the church and farmed the land. They actually farmed the land. And so they had this in common with the parishioners. They were all farmers in a way. And it was the center. The church was the first thing that the pioneers established. They arrived, they trickled in 1854. And 2 years later, they went to St. Ansgar, Iowa, and hauled a preacher back to form a church. So that was one of their first acts as a community. And it became the center of religious and social life right away. Most of the community members identified as Norwegian American Lutherans, and the church doctrine was taken seriously. And I heard growing up, my father used to say, "Det står i Bibel." It's written in the Bible. It stands in the Bible. So that settles the argument. And the parsonage was the parish commons, kind of a, if you will, a community commons, a site of family gatherings, anniversaries, and so on. And so as I would drive by there, many years later, it always struck me as this is the center, kind of the domestic aspect of the church. Okay, so in the beginning, this is just an illustration of what it might look like. This was an oak savanna landscape, and there were oaks there. It started under an oak tree, where the pastor from St. Ansgar, Clausen, formed the church. This is a drawing of the first pastor, Lawrence Steen, came directly from Iowa, kind of a stern young man. Didn't get along so well with everybody, but by reputation. But he he's the one who suggested building churches. He came in 1861 and he stayed till 69. And he also was a pastor at Bear Creek down by Grand Meadow. And I think, he ran into some trouble there. I think he did pretty well in this church though. But here are the original, here's how the churches looked originally. East St. Olaf was built of stone, limestone from all these quarries we have around here. And that's the way it looked until 1907, when it got struck by lightning and burned to the ground. And that was West St. Olaf on the right side. And it had a tall steeple that blew down in the 40s. And so it looks quite a bit, they both look quite a bit different today. West St. Olaf, those are the same walls, the stone walls. It had an interior fire that caused problems. And of course, the steeple fell off. And this is East St. Olaf. It's been, it's a wooden church, obviously, and it's been added on to. But at the peak, I think I don't know what the peak would be, the turn of the century, roughly 1900, the combined membership was something like 1,300. So it was, and this is the only picture I found of the brick parsonage. And it was built in 1877. And as I've been cleaning up inside, I found a remnant of the bricks, a little strip in the basement where you can see the original bricks. And I'm told that, well, who of the garden marketplace? Randy Lenz? You were born, you lived there, right? Yeah, he lives in another house by Oslo, just similar to a brick house. So he's into bricks.
Yes.
And he said that,
Do you know
yeah.
do you know who built that per chance?
Well,
Did you
no,
ever
I
find
don't.
out?
I'd like to
Because
find
it
out.
looks almost exactly like my farmhouse.
It did.
Yes, with that porch
Yeah.
on top and the.
And when was yours built?
Well, during Civil War times.
What about this? Well, a little bit before then. Yeah.
70,
Yeah.
I mean, 1865.
But what Randy told me is, if you want to restore this back to brick, it better be Winona brick from the Winona brick factory. Because if it's Cassim brick, that's not so good quality. So I don't know how you find that out, but anyway, this was Reverend Thorson, quite a dignified man. And he couldn't speak English, so services were in Norwegian until 1917. Okay. So that's not many people have seen that picture, so not many people know that it was a brick building. So after, and Thorson had with two wives in succession, 17 children. So he needed to get out of the cabin and they both needed to get out, along with the kids. So, and also his wife formed a ladies' aid after they had this, because now there's a place to meet. And of course, that's the Kvinneforeningen, right, Jerry? Kvinneforeningen. I used to know Norwegian better than I do today. But it was led by Bernhardine Thorson, first meeting in January 1879, and they would raise money for church missions and do other things. So then in 1916, J.C.K. Preuss came, Johann Christian Kaiser Preuss, and he was, a descendant of this kind of royal Lutheran family, starting with Hermann Amberg Preuss in Wisconsin, and then C.K. Preuss, Christian Kaiser, who was president of Luther College, and he was his father. So it was remodeled with wood siding in 1917. And Preuss lived there for, and you can see this part was added. You don't see that in the brick.
Right.
So there was an addition as well. And these are my grandparents there, Reverend and Mrs. DJ Borg, all the pastors went by initials then. No first names or anything, no talk about football in sermons and whatnot. Just the straight gospel. And so I show this again because last winter, when I was rummaging through our attic on the farm out in Vernon Township, Dodge County, I came across a trove of information that my grandfather had written down about living in the parsonage, the records he kept on how much it cost to buy chicken feed, how much the chicken sold for, and a little contract with their hired man, Louis Christensen, who's buried in the East Cemetery, as my grandparents are too. So yeah, you can't make out the date. Something was lost in the translation when I emailed it here, I think. But anyway, he stayed until 1957. And during that time, and previous to him, was the parsonage and its 60 acres and all the buildings. It was a farm. It was a working farm. And a lot of people today don't realize that. And that's, and I really think that changes the whole interaction between the pastor and his congregation. If he's, he's keeping track of the prices, he knows where they're selling their cream, and he's asking who the best sheep shearer is, and so forth. And here, there was an article in the Rochester Post Bulletin in 1957 announcing their retirement, and this shows my grandpa with the sheep and his wife Rosa, with a bottle of milk for the lamb. And here's some of what the records I found. I'll read it here maybe. Grain, this is the contract with Louis Christensen. Grain and corn on half. So it's a 50-50 cost share, or shares of the revenue. Thrashed here, corn cut and shocked. So they're shocking corn. Don't do that anymore. Seed furnished by, first was tenant, then the owner. So Louis kind of, you're negotiating, right? Hay, work hired. Didn't want to do any haying. Louis he set his boundaries, let's put it that way. Manure hauled out, garden, etc., plowed and dragged, fencing done, material furnished by owner. Okay. Chores when I am gone, pay for it. Team in winter when necessary, so he could use the team. And this was 1937. And on the right side, you can see in scrawled handwriting some of the details of their income. There was $2,100 as a salary, and the incidentals were like 756. That's funerals, weddings, and so forth. And the organ, $103 for his wife. And farm income was $482. And the records show everything is down to the penny, about, here's the chicken feed, and here's the corn, and here's the hired labor, and everything is just minute down to the penny. And so this was for 1944, I had the most complete information, so I used that. And my mom always used to say, she grew up here, she always used to say, she went to St. Olaf College, and she said, they paid for my education with a litter of pigs. And I said, oh, Mom, come on, But I looked it up, and these are actual pigs from the parsonage. And in 1938, they sold 8 market hogs for 160. Well, that's kind of an average litter, right? And that's equivalent today with inflation, 3% a year or something, is 2,883. So not that would cover tuition at St. Olaf today, but you can kind of see how it might have worked. Then I call this the beacon on the hill, because the parsonage was such a gathering place. And this, I think, was there was a double wedding that took place, my grandpa and his cousin in La Crosse. And this is the 25th anniversary of that. And they were all pastors. They were both pastors, so pastors and their wives, and the wives came from pastors' families too. They all kind of stuck together. And so this is a whole panorama of who attended that. This is family. Now this is 1931, if you can see here at the bottom. And this was celebrating the church's 75th anniversary in 1931, when my grandpa had been there 5 years. There were hundreds of people there, hundreds of people standing in front of the parsonage. So the parsonage was the center of the festivities. And then on a more intimate scale, you know, a few friends might come over for a Sunday afternoon. They're all wearing ties. You can see it's Sunday, and maybe play some croquet. They didn't have lawn furniture in those days. They brought the table out from the kitchen. And this was 18th of June, 1933. And the whole family there having a good time with a picnic. Open door to parishioners and guests. And, you know, I have to work with the photos I have. I'm not trying to be a ham or something, but, you know, you might recognize that little guy. And this was Mellum. He was after Pastor Mellum. He was after my grandpa, and that was my grandpa in black and white there. Again, with our family, I guess, but other, you know, and in 1927, this picture is taken. They all wore hats. I think they must have, you know. This is my Uncle Paul and my mom. They even got hats, you know, for the occasion, some hat day or something. Now they have the red hat thing. And this is in front of the parsonage. And this is the Lutheran Daughters of the Reformation. It's like out east, you have the, what is it? The daughters of the ones who came over on the Mayflower. Daughters of the what? VAR, oh yeah, American Revolution. So this is our equivalent, you know, the Daughters of the Reformation. You know, I showed this first to some people out there who know all these people, or at least some of them do. This up there, that's Tilly and Knut Quill. She was the junior choir director when I was going to, you knew Tilly, right, Pat? You know Tilly, right?
My junior choir director.
Yes, she was an institution. She and Knut. And this is inside the parsonage by the piano. And on top there, that's Mary Halderson. That was our neighbor on the farm to the right there. She took care of me in my first year of life, by the way, when my mother had a tragedy to deal with. This is, on the left, there is a little wedding from Elf and Laura Larson, very well known in the community. He became a legislator, and he had a gravelly voice. When he would talk to you, you really knew that he was saying something important. But great people. And then the two mystery ladies, I don't know who they are, but you know, they're trying on some kind of interesting clothes. And oh, I can't help it. That's my mother and Paul, my mom with a dog. You know, I just want to show that life was lived there, you know. That was my Uncle Paul, you know, striking a pose. And wouldn't you know, he majored in drama at Luther College. You know, he was pretty dramatic too, most of the time. But so kind of to return to the beginning, my assertion here is that the parsonage is a local historic landmark that testifies to a time when East and West St. Olaf Church was the spiritual and cultural center of the community, when the pastor and parishioners were united by reliance on the land for daily sustenance, and the pastor's home was a gift from the congregation to whom its doors were open in a reciprocal kind of fashion, give and take. And so that was a kind of a special relation between the pastor's family and the community that I think we've lost. Just along with the use of the parsonage. So the current situation is the cost of maintenance and needed repairs following a time of neglect. It's used as a church office a couple times a week. And there is a proposal in one of the church councils to demolish it as a cost-saving measure. And so what I'm proposing and what we're talking about in the St. Olaf Heritage Association is let's look at some alternatives before we get out the bulldozers and get the fire crews in. Maybe we could sell it as is, make some money on it instead of lose money demolishing it. Could it be preserved as an historic site? And that's what we're here to investigate today in particular. And I've contacted the State Preservation Office, and I know some of the questions they ask, and I think we have a shot at it. I don't know if we'd be on the National Register or not. Continued use as a church office, but to fix it up is going to take some money, so fundraising will be part of that. Remodel for a bed and breakfast or a daycare, something that would pay its way, and other possibilities as we go along. And here's a slogan that to me kind of summarizes the effort here. A community that remembers its past retains its identity. We lost the identity there, I'm sorry. But it's just, to me, it's just a beautiful home, and yeah, it has some problems, but it can be restored to look pretty much like that again. And the piping is old, and the electricity and the furnace or the boiler and everything, it's all true. But in one of my conversations with the State Historic Society, what was that, Todd Mahan, you know him? Yeah, he said, when I asked him who I should contact about this, he said, well, you might think about, an historic preservation district instead of just a building. And that really appealed to me because of all the surrounding buildings we have. He says that's kind of the trend today in the world of historic preservation, not just a single building, but an area where the buildings fit together. And so if you look at this, this is my own piece, my own graphic. It's kind of it's just basic. But you see Rochester, Byron, Casson, County Road 3. It's not straight, I know. Here's the Dodge Olmsted boundary, and here's County Road. Here's the Casson Oslo Road. And here's Highway 30, this is Rockdale, and that's Oslo. Everybody oriented? Okay. And so we go to, in Olmsted County, we have the Twerberg, that's TV, log house. The Twerberg log house has been restored. Here's the parsonage right next to it on 60 acres of land. And there's a little, well, right here is the cemetery. And this is East St. Olaf Church. And down the hill, this is Zion Cemetery. And that's kind of the reminder of that predestination controversy that split that church, East St. Olaf, along with hundreds of other Norwegian Lutheran churches in that period of time, 1888 to 1917. It's really remarkable to think about today. What splits churches is not hair-splitting theological arguments. It's more these social issues, right? But back then, your views on predestination were important. So that's in there and then we have here, West St. Olaf, that you've seen. And then here's the chapel across the road. And that is an interesting story. It's used every Sunday for coffee, and it's used quite a bit. But it was constructed in 1925 under the Luther League got credit for it. I'm sure their dads helped them out a little bit. But they took a church in Hayfield, 6 miles away, that had been abandoned after the resolution of the predestination controversy. So then where they had a leftover church, so called the Cedar, I think it was the Cedar Church. And they used the lumber for that to make a chapel. So that's kind of a historic, significant building as well.
There's also the Rockdale Town Hall
Rockdale Town Hall on the corner.
that is historical, and that's being looked at now too.
They're looking at it to do what?
Torn down, some people.
Oh, the same thing, huh?
So that's. part
That's
of
made
this-
of stone.
That's part of this historic district.
Okay. Maybe it could be the creamery too in Rockdale, maybe. That's where when my mom was working there in World War II and her husband was in England. On her birthday, he sent her flowers. And the co-worker there said, well, they sure kept good. Okay. Okay, so in this historic district, here's a picture of, these are the two churches, here's the log house. And here's the chapel, the way it looked way back in the day when there was still a steeple there. And the parsonage, of course. That's a modern view of the parsonage. Then I think we have one or two more slides here. We have in the last 10 years, this has been a project I've worked on. We've worked with the State Historical Society on historical markers. So we have one on, these got kind of out of line here. But this is on the log house, obviously, talking about the origins of the church. This is on the predestination controversy down the hill. And there are some Nelsons there. I know we have several Nelsons in the crowd. And this is building West St. Olaf, how they hauled wood, not wood, but each farmer was required to haul a sled of a what do you call that? A cord, a 4x4x8 quantity of stone to the church as his contribution. So everybody had stones in there, right? And these were all done with support funding from the State Historical Society, and they run you through the paces when you make that application. So I think that speaks to some of the historical significance here too. And so this is your speaker here, in case any of you want to get a hold of me later. So with that, I look forward to a discussion on, where do we go from here? And we have, I think, an opportunity here to work on 2 counties, perhaps, if we do this thing. And Jean Bartel is here. You want to stand up for those of you in Olmsted County who don't know you? She's the head of the president, isn't it, of the Dodge County Historical Society. So I asked her to come and she came. So thank you very much. And thank you all very much for listening.
It up for discussion and ideas?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And maybe your own reaction or,
Of course, I want to say that first thing. But I do think like one of the criteria for preservation is like securing and preserving a cultural identity. And certainly the Norwegian thread that runs through that would be something you could base your not argument, but your proposal on the fact that it is very much preserving cultural identity because of the Norwegian population. It's hard because money, it's just not there. It's unfortunately, especially the current minister, there's no real federal money right now. The Minnesota Historical Society, we're lucky because we have one of the very best in the whole country in terms of historical societies. Their grants are bare, any grant is, it's pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. But I think, the parsonage doesn't have any structural damage, does it?
no, I think you could say the bones are good, but it's, right now the gutters haven't been tended to, so you have little seedlings growing and water that should be going away from the building is pouring down along the foundation and, you know, eating away at that, slowly. But, it has, vinyl siding, which isn't exactly historic, but, you know, every building is modernized,
Oh,
I
absolutely.
guess, so, it had a lot of crud on it, algae, and I found that it comes off with, either a pressure washer or scrubbing, so.
So is it possible just if you pull that vinyl siding off, can you see the beautiful brick underneath, or is there
No,
layer?
there'd be wood underneath and then the brick, so that would be a major undertaking and you'd wanna kind of probe and see what the quality of the brick is.
Yeah,
Because I would think in attaching the wood siding, they had to bore into the brick, and so there might be some holes.
yeah, we just spent, more than I want to disclose to redo our barn up here, and the brick masonry was over 6 figures just for our basement of the barn, so it's not cheap. Is there a barn on site?
No, it used to be, it was burned down, or it was destroyed. And the granary was just removed, and the culprit is the raccoons. The raccoons took up residence.
Yeah, we have that with the red squirrel. So does it still, it still has the 60 acres with it?
Yes,
Is that, would there be potential to sell some of that additional acreage to earn money for restoration, maybe? I don't know, this is the first time even hearing of any of this, or is that a controversy too, where people wanna
It's a
keep all the
controversy.
land?
Controversy.
Everything's
it's
controversial. isn't
possible,
it?
but there are diverse opinions on whether to sell the land.
Yeah, you'll never get everyone to agree, but, I don't know, I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't this be a beautiful wedding venue? But I thought maybe you had a barn, because that's all the rage now, is the rustic barn wedding, and, what does anyone else think? What are some of the thoughts out there?
I drive past this place all the time. I have a daughter who lives in Lincoln, so I'm not sure where this is all located, but I know where the east and west churches are. So I'm not from that area, but two things. Number one, you're Norwegians and I'm not, so do you belong to Sons of Norway? Sons of Norway have lots of money.
Oh,
And they had a place on Highway 52, just off Highway 52, and when Highway 52 was expanded, they got lots of money for that location. So that certainly might be, you know.
we
belong
got
to the
we got
Sons of
their
Norway.
bell. We donated their bell that they had out there
Okay,
to us. So.
well, there you go.
Sons of Norway, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a
Sons
good
of
idea.
Norway might be. Don't know what my second thought was.
It'll come yet.
But Sons of Norway, I think, is a
Good resource.
might be a resource, because they don't know what to do with the money every year.
Oh, we can tell.
Oh, wow.
They want to have their meetings out there, but that would be okay with you, and.
Yeah, sure.
So, contact the Sons of Norway.
Okay, good idea.
Other thoughts, controversies, anything, any other ideas that you wanna bring up and,
Oh, I think the other one.
Yeah.
Since the Lutherans have lots of money,
Oh,
Lutheran synods have, can help you out with a couple $100,000.
No.
Not aware of that,
Ask it, you
Yeah.
always ask, you know, this is part of the heritage. I would certainly contact the Lutheran synods and say, you know, one time I was Lutheran, and they, you know, I would certainly check those people out and
okay.
look for the historical preservation of that era, because it was unique.
Yeah, yeah. I talked to my thriving advisor about this and, he, just stared off into the distance. It didn't really resonate with him. He's from Nebraska though.
it's easy to find people that have a soft spot for history. It's harder to get them to open their wallets and help with it, that's for sure. I do know, like, we had a $500,000 grant. So you can get a $500,000 grant from the Minnesota Historical Society if they prove it and you meet all the conditions, which I would argue you do in many cases. But it is laborious, but that kind of money is out there if you're lucky enough to get it. But I will tell you, I don't envy anyone that writes them, because it's difficult. We're trying to get our stone house out here restored, and the you have to have historical architectures involved, and I mean, the whole 9 yards, it's a lot of work, but it's out there. If you have people who are willing to do the work, and it certainly sounds like you've got a passionate group here that can do it.
What Todd Mahan of the Historical Society told me is that if you're a nonprofit, you can apply for a grant to get a grant writer. You know, to go through the details of it. And so the church is a nonprofit, or association is a nonprofit, so that would be a nonprofit. I was gonna ask you, if we looked at the historic district idea, would an Olmsted County Park or some offshoot of the History Center or something, is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I love the idea of the historic district. I think that's really cool. I mean, I can tell you in terms of funding, here, less than 22% of our budget is funded by the county. So there's just not a lot of county money out there. Honestly, it's a little sad. And in our case, because it's in our title, everybody thinks that we're completely funded by the county, which we're not. But you pursue it, right? You ask. There's a lot of cool things with technology, just to kind of get things going. There's all kinds of things with phones with people younger than us that know how to use it better than we do. But there's programs where people can just search on their phone. There's a program called Story Guide. And there's a subscription fee, but you can download all the information on it that you want. And then all people have to do is download that app, click on it, and you can have everything you want to say. You can have pictures, you can have text, you can have audio, you can have anything you want on that. So that people can at least go around and learn about the sites. And then you very conveniently on the last page put here's where you click to donate to our site. I mean, so if part of it is getting the word out there, right? Because people don't know it's there. So do things like write to, you talk to Todd, but now talk to what's her name at the Minnesota Historical Society who does the magazine. Submit stories about exactly what you've presented, and hit like the nice Norwegian thread through there, Ufta. And if Minnesota Historical Society picks up a story, or the Associated Press, or you send it to the Star Trib or Post Bulletin. Like, I always think like the first step is just getting the word out there. I didn't know anything about this. I've lived here for 26 years. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know anything about it. So get the word out. And then you just hope you find a nice rich benefactor, or you look into alternate ways that might not be everyone's cup of tea. To do alternate ideas to make revenue. And maybe you start with something like that log cabin is fabulous. That's really fabulous. Like maybe you start small, and that's something that you get signage for. And if you're interested in this, a mile over here is this. I mean, I'm no expert, but I think you just have to get creative in what you can do. I mean, it's fantastic. I think it's wonderful. I think the historic district's a great idea. But the problem with everything is there's no money, or there's very little money to do the amount of work and cost that it takes to preserve things.
Or there may be a lot of money as long as you get the word out and give enough information to people that are interested in preservation.
Yeah, you might find some good Norwegians out there that don't even live in Minnesota that might decide this is something they'd be interested in donating to. It's all about getting the word out. I don't know, I wish you the best of luck. I think it's a great project. And I do think maybe starting small with that log cabin, but and as a divided group, you've got, not here necessarily, but as a large group, not everyone's on the same page. That's a tough hurdle.
Norman, I'm not Norwegian, but my wife is, got a good dose of Norwegian in her. But between Norwegians and Swedes in the region, do they get along, or are there no Swedes here, or is it all Norwegians?
The Swedes used to own the Norwegians. You see, that's why they.
Oh.
The Danish owned
And
everybody.
Danish, yeah, and Danish. Yeah.
Okay, and are regional Lutheran churches still sort of Norwegian and Swedish?
Well, I think that identity is sort of fading away gradually. I mean, at East St. Olaf, they actually had a St. Patrick's celebration.
Well, there was a lot of Irish that came
Yeah.
into,
And German.
into,
Right.
western Olmsted County,
Right.
Salem Corners area.
Very
such.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't just purely Norwegian.
I think now, they're just proud to be Scandinavian.
No,
don't you
Irish.
think? There's more of a pride of being Scandinavian.
Yeah, well, it's a kind of a identity, like I grew up hearing Norwegian on the party lines and, I actually thought that Martin Luther was a Norwegian. I learned in college that, no, he was German. You can't be. And I pictured this map of Europe with Norway like this, and Germany. France, Italy, but, you know, literally, I just thought, everybody talked about Norway when I was, and I just didn't think anything else existed, but I'm probably an exception.
Well, I know in the town I grew up in, which is a tiny town in western Minnesota, all the streets are named after Norse gods. So we have Olaf and Oskar and Harfarger, so we were a bit Norwegian, and then, the Germans moved in, and as I'm told, it did not go well. They had their side of town and they had another. But it's interesting because the church, as I think it's the West Church, the design of the church is exactly like one of the Lutheran churches in my hometown. Exactly, like if you put the two next to each other, it would have been Our Savior's Lutheran. I mean, it caught me off guard a little bit, like how exactly alike the style was.
You know, outside of, Wanamingo, between Wanamingo and Kenyon, there's what's called the Holden Church. And that's a famous, I was just there and I stopped in, this huge parking lot was empty, the door was open, so I walked in, and everything. And they had a church, and then over here, they had a park and a parsonage that was still being lived in, probably by a non-minister. There were chickens running around and everything. But they had a park and, I don't know, I thought, well, I wonder how much this is actually used. You know, but, they've done it.
I would also say you have enough information, you should be writing a book.
Well,
You can hand out.
I got the
I
pamphlet.
have booklets.
Yeah, the booklet's fantastic.
Why don't we
But-
hand out the pamphlet for people that don't
Keep
have?
digging, and
Yeah.
if you can come up with a book,
Yeah, this one,
I mean, this is a great start.
who needs a book? Do you have one, Kathy?
So,
Okay.
here's the
You have one?
corporate log house.
Yeah, bad.
I have one of those. This is bad. You want to go log cabin?
Yeah, I can.
Log cabin, anyone? You got it, each one? And I have the West St. Olaf Church, if anyone needs the West St. Olaf. You've got a wonderful resource. Get these everywhere. This one? Or both? The amount of work that's been done already is really impressive. Really impressive.
Actually, you know, my stepfather was one of the few people who started restoring that cabin. And, they contacted the Olmsted County Historical Society and Decorah, the Vesterheim.
Yeah.
It's just-
And the state, and they got input on whether it was worth saving. They got a $2,500 grant to move it to its site and do some restoration. But in their earlier writing about our purpose and everything, they referred to it as a museum. And they said we could have tours, from Rochester, people coming out or visiting or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, they were thinking big, but, you know, it stayed kind of small though in the end.
Next year's our 100th anniversary of the Homestead Historical Society.
What is it?
So one of the things that I really want to do is pull every single historical anything in Olmsted County together and then book like a bus tour. And so you went, it'd be all day, but you would go and hit all the historic stops in Olmsted County.
Oh.
And so if I can pull that together, maybe we can
Sure.
add that to the tour and look at the log cabin and the parsonage and have you ride the bus or any of you ride on the bus and talk about, you know, anything that gets the word out. Well, I commend you for trying. It's not an easy thing at all.
Norman, how long do you think it'll be before we can get east and west together to talk about what they wanna do?
What they wanna do with the parsonage? I don't know, you know, I think, I've tried to get information on the history out so that that's taken into account when you make that decision.
Good job of that.
But I don't know how long it'll take, but I know there's a lot of support for keeping it and for not selling the land. When I talk to people,
But we have not had a congregational meeting,
no,
which I think is what Jerry's talking about.
Yeah.
yeah,
Congregational meetings to bring east and west together so that we can.
yeah, this may go on. I've heard that even the next annual meeting may not be ready for this. I don't know. You'd think,
Is your Heritage Association a nonprofit?
yes, 501c3,
So any work that you would do on any of the properties would be tax exempt.
right,
So
right.
that's one small bonus.
Mhm,
Trying to find a silver lining.
yeah.
Is there, this is an odd question, but is there like, I don't wanna say animosity, but between east and west, is it like high school rivals? Or does everyone sort of know each other and get along and?
There has been.
He's been a member at East forever.
Okay,
And there have been things that have gone on, yes. But I think right now, I think what we're seeing is that one of the congregations is probably made up of more of the new people. And the other congregation doesn't have as many new people, so the old people can still control things a little bit more. That's what I'm kind of seeing when I see some of the leadership of the two churches.
and are you able to get the younger, newer people involved in this, or do they not care because they have no ties? Who's that? The younger people coming into the church, do they have the same interest in the history?
Well, some of them are very interested in it. But I don't know in two ways, but look, I'm here. Well, I know we're doing certain.
I know in my own case, I didn't have much interest before I retired,
Yeah.
60 years old. And then suddenly I delved into it and
It's fascinating.
yeah,
Well, especially with your familial ties,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
incredible.
but, 10 years before that, I was,
I've even heard of people that work pretty hard in the city of Rochester, and sometimes employers may or others, it could be a retreat for people just to get out of the bustle and pressure of working. Because I've been out to the parsonage a few times, and I'm not from a farm family, and I know farms are hard work, generation after generation, but the peacefulness, just the huge trees and I saw a skunk this week. The wildlife, the birds, the morning light, the evening light. It's a very peaceful place, and it's still technically able to support people having computers, or maybe you don't want to even bring a computer there.
That's a good
But
idea.
just to see it at twilight and dawn, it's quite amazing. So it's a very peaceful, releasing place.
one thing I thought of was, finding out, there are several, like the buildings or associations, what's the one for Heart? Where they house the families visiting, patients who are in long-term care.
Oh, oh.
Oh,
So
Hope-
the-
Hope Lodge.
Hope Lodge, yeah, Hope Lodge. So getting in a, an extension of, we have 4 or 5 bedrooms out there. Maybe people who are staying for a month, they'd like to get out in the country and more peace and quiet.
All good ideas.
Maybe that's a possibility. So,
I think all of these are good ideas. I don't want to put a damper on this, but the biggest thing of liability
Mhm.
and insurance
Hmm.
and codes. Once you start doing it, once you start running into somebody else, it's a code issue and those codes will kill you. Even though it's not Rochester,
Mhm.
the codes will kill you and it's horrendous.
oh,
I know the lady from Dodge County will, attest to that with the trying to resurrect the gas in school. I've been in that building a couple of times with people that wanted to resurrect it. And it's been going on for what, 30 years?
Really? Wow.
I don't know if it's 30, but it has
It's
been.
a long time.
long time.
Yeah. And it reverts back to, you gotta meet the new codes, but you can't do anything to the building and it's not easy.
I will say, depending on what you're doing though, if it is a historical structure, they also cannot force you to do some of those things, right? Because you ruin the historical
Right.
nature of the structure. But again, I mean, you can't have someone who is just had a heart transplant out there taking stairs to
Oh,
the second
yeah.
floor, but there still has to be some interest from some community,
Mhm.
some social community that would be interested in it, as you said, like a bed and breakfast or a retreat or a wedding venue, or there is still interest for some of those things, I think. You can't, listen to all the naysayers. You have to start somewhere and work out. I think.
There's a place to put an elevator in it.
Yeah.
And
so-
you can do all of that,
Yeah,
like
right.
our 1873 barn, we have electricity, we have modern lighting going in, we have all the things. It's just hidden, so you don't see the wires and stuff, so, and even if you're on the National Register, if you own it, it's up to you what you do with it, you paint it bright pink if you want. But if you're gonna get grants, they're gonna be the ones that say you can do it, but you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right. I got another idea. We have in Rochester, the middle of Rochester, nobody knows about this, but there was a Dr. Schaefer years ago. Schaefer Academy is named after him.
Oh,
There's a Schaefer retreat in the middle of Rochester that goes up a hillside. Very, very, very few people know it's there, but people come from all over the world to spend 2 or 3 weeks in this retreat in this hillside.
Hmm.
And I can give you the address, I can take you there.
Hmm.
Well, I can't give the address because I don't know the exact address.
is it near the academy or?
No, it's up off, kind of off by Elder Road.
Oh,
You gotta go up the street there, and then you come to a dead end, and then there's a little trail up the hill, and then you come up to there, and they got a new building that they built with a streetcar tucked under garage, and they got an apartment up above, and they got their library there with all the Schaefer stuff in.
oh,
Then they got another house, so I think you can get away with some things as a religious retreat that you can't get away with some other items.
okay.
Don't know that for sure, but I think you can, but this, as a religious retreat,
Mhm.
for ecumenical purposes, like they use the Sissy Heights for.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
Right, right. Yeah, we should get that information.
I wonder if it should just, float this past the Senate too. To see if there would be any interest in a regional
Mhm.
Lutheran retreat place where you've got land, got a lot of space, you got fresh air,
Mhm.
and you got a lot of history. And a lot of the city-bound churches don't have that.
No.
And to offer them access to what you do have.
Not by Spring Valley, they have that, what do you call it?
Good Earth Village.
Good Earth Village.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I've never been there, but it's kind of a retreat, isn't it?
Well, I think you've got a lot of promise. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things you could do. And the building is structurally sound, so that's half the battle right there.
Mhm.
Keep getting the word out.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be, but if there's anything here we could do to help. Yeah.
course, in the church, I think we have this odd conversation between the ones who want to tear it down, saying, oh, it's hopeless and it's all out of date and it'll cost $1 million. And then others will say, well, wait a minute, but the historic value and the structure is sound. And a lot of these problems are superficial and just the result of neglect, so just gotta upgrade. But
And
it's,
some of the work that could be done on it could be done by volunteers.
yeah.
You know, again, insurance and liability, it depends on what it is, but
Mhm.
you don't have to.
Right. Well, we can take names.
Yeah, it's a wonderful project and I wish you all the luck in the world. And like I said, I don't know what it'd be, but if there's anything here that we could assist with on the homestead side, we're happy to do what we can.
Sure. Well, just, keep it in mind if it fits some of your, like that bus tour.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And also, if you have any references that are dependable or enjoy the work of just social media and online, creating a website that are professional, that could be helpful.
Our best luck with things like that is get a teenager, cause they get how it works, but, no, having an online presence is very important.
So it could be a school project, maybe.
It could be like a,
No, I mean,
artist do that in RCC.
yeah, they could get-
Yeah, so you could do an intern in marketing or social marketing.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. I mean, this was fascinating, and like I said, if there's anything we can do to help, or you wanna
Okay.
meet here again, if this is, whatever,
Okay.
we could. I'm happy to kind of feature this in one of our e-blasts that goes out to our members, and that's not a ton of people, but I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any help you can give?
it's a great project, right?
Thanks for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, thank you for coming in. It's a great project that I think is We wish I bought lottery tickets. So we could help each other.